This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. That'll be $400 pounds.
Subscribe to the Shipwrecked and Comatose Patreon. It will be $400 pounds.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello, everyone. No, don't do that again. Hello, everyone. Oh, my God, my voice is going. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast on the Film Stories Podcast Network. My name is Kurt North, who is very, very tired after working both ends of the day. Joining me this week for the final 2 episodes as a guest, Mr. Matt Latham. Matt, we are in the end of Red Dwarf 12. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. I feel like a whole, I don't know, expectation of to make, this recording block of this week and next week, obviously, wink, lol, exciting and extravagant and loads of callbacks and cheese.
Yeah. Well, if you don't hear from me from a while, it's because I'm sleeping. Also, as well, Mr. Mark Adams is here. Hello, Mark.
Oh, yeah. End of an era shit, innit?
End of an era shit. This is probably pretty much 90% guaranteed to be the last ever main series that we cover, because rumours about 3 episodes, that kind of thing, or special, a bit like Promised Land. So this is definitely an end of an era. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. We've got lots of fun plans. If we hadn't got lots of fun plans, I'd be sad. But because we've got lots of fun plans, I'm good. It just feels like an end of a... You know how, Red Dwarf, we kind of, in our heads, split it into 1 and 2, 3 to 6, and then the 2 really bad seasons, and then the Dave seasons, 3 really bad seasons. Almost feels like we've definitely come to the end of one of those, but we're not going anywhere. We've got loads of great stuff coming, and some of them are relevant to Red Dwarf.
Well, unusually. I think after the recording last week, didn't we actually have a look at how many episodes we had, where it was there was 160, 70 episodes, and only 70 of them are the actual Red Dwarf.
Oh yeah, we've got more specials than we've got episodes covering episodes of Red Dwarf, yes.
And didn't we have a little bit of a discussion about who the most prolific podcaster is on the network as well? I think we believe
we did,
that as well.
And it was me.
No.
All right, Matt, would you like to guess who's done the least episodes out of the 5 of us?
Me.
It is you, but not by much, by about 3 or 4.
Yeah, I wonder who made those little tables that automatically count things up in the spreadsheet.
Okay. I don't know whether you'd looked at it recently. It was you. But
yes.
I used it. You gave me a tool and I used it.
He's trying his best, though. He did a Death in Paradise not long ago.
He did, and it was very, very cool.
He says,
by the time this airs, I'm pretty sure that Mark would have actually heard it. He's only uploaded it to me.
Well, and what we will say is Mr. Mark Adams is a bit of a slave driver. We've been quite prolific in podcasting over the last 2 to 3 months. So it's all
we
Mark.
have. We haven't had a week off for nearly 3 months.
So whose fault is that, Mark?
Mine.
He wants us to be finished by the end of the year.
I want to watch the fucking Promised Land, so let's get this done and I can watch it.
No, you want to watch The Labyrinth, Mark.
I also want to watch Labyrinth. I'm looking forward to recording Labyrinth. I'm looking forward to Matt being the noob, actually, because Matt's the only one of us that hasn't watched Labyrinth.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping it's not like Tron when I watched it finally, for the first time about 15 years ago and thought it was shit.
So, Matt, what do you think about this then? We talked in Birmingham a couple of years back about this very moment, actually. Next week we're going to get all warm and snuggly. But that's for next week. Yeah, how are we feeling about getting to Red Dwarf 12? I mean, just thinking about this podcast, 2020 we started this. And 4 years in, so how are we feeling about that?
I know one of the 3 of us had just recently listened to a chat that we had over 3 episodes when the original 3 million years came through. And I can't remember what our conversation was for the most part, but I think one of the things that Mark pointed out was that that apparently we predicted that it'd probably get finished by about 2022.
Yeah, that was you. You predicted that,
me.
and you were very wrong.
Oh well.
I don't think you realised just how much Mark likes a special.
I love a special.
I think we've kind of like naturally got like pace-wise got to this point. Like, what, 4 years in now, and kind of like reaching the end of this kind of like era. We've got a massive backlog of episodes. We're now a Red Dwarf podcast that newbies will probably look at and go, I'm not listening to that. It's doing episodes, which is some. So
Yeah.
You say that. I'm actually the opposite. There's loads of Red Dwarf podcasts out there. I'm not going to name them because it's not fair, but there's like 4 or 5 that started and didn't get to the end of series 12.
Mm-hmm.
And the last episode they posted was a couple of years, 4 years, one of them 6 years ago. There's a lot of Red Dwarf podcasts that didn't complete the run. And we should be really proud of ourselves that not only have we done that, we've looked at so much other random shit to do with Red Dwarf as well. And we're still going, and we're doing Promised Land as a fucking minute podcast.
Yeah.
We're the best one, basically. That's what I'm saying.
You know what? What I also think it is, and I can't remember if I said this on air, though. I also think it's probably because there's 5 of us, and we've got the 2 of you are kind of like co-showrunners, and you've got the three of us to kind of like fall back on. So it's not always just like dependent on 2 people. You can kind of flexibly, like there's a flexibility between it, and then like I mean, like Kirsting is like he's hardly on a special. I'm not exactly sure how many non-episode episodes have you been on, apart from I think this is a 3 million years. I think there's a 1 or 2 Christmas
There's 3 million
specials.
years. There's Rob Turnbull interview. What else was there?
Yeah.
A couple of Christmas specials.
You did Dad as well.
Is that?
Yeah,
I think-
was it Dad? Oh, it was definitely a lost episode you came on. And did you do Universe Challenge?
No, I don't think I did the Universe Challenge either.
Shit.
I think it's pretty much like if a special is the closer the relevance to Red Dwarf a special is, the more likely Kurt's supposed to be on.
Well, you say that. He's not on any of the ones we did about the magazines that we haven't completed yet.
No, but they will be completed.
Yeah.
And I'll just take up, what Mark said. Different Red Dwarf podcasts are, what's the best way of putting it? This is
Available.
They are available. This is centrist Kurt coming back out, Mark. Different podcasts are available, and each approach it in a different way. So if you don't like us, why are you listening to us at Red Dwarf 12? I wouldn't have any idea, but never mind.
I mean, there's one or two that I kind of really wouldn't mind actually listening to because the way they approach them seem quite interesting. But
Yeah.
of course, like obviously we are supposed to be good, but we are like your first, best, last hope for Red Dwarf.
Yeah, and
Apart from perhaps the semi-official one. It's been around for like about 3 times as long as this.
yeah, exactly.
Mention
But
the name,
but also as well, I mean, talking about the finish and stuff. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I would. Out of everything that I've done, I've always completed it in the podcasting realm. So I think that's always going to be a staple. That I've started the lost one, I will complete it. If something happens to me and I can't actually do it anymore, then I'll be really disappointed. You know what I mean? It's kind of that thing where I'll have to get through them because
I am Kurt North's ghost. Ooh, this is season 4 of Lost. Ooh.
I'll be a whisper. I'm not ready to move on yet. I'm not ready to move on. I need to complete the podcast.
I don't really think there's any others other than Chucky where it's actually been like that for me. And we've always joked that I've had lots and lots of podcasts, but they could have all have ended at any point really because they weren't explicitly on one specific telly show. And I don't think so. Anyway, I mean, like something like Right in the Childhood, we could have done hundreds and hundreds of episodes of that, or none. And finished at any point. I think some of them, maybe I'm disappointed I didn't do more, but I've not really had a podcast other than this. And we had the recent sad news about Chucky, so I've completed that accidentally as well on Chucky Vision.
But I think the point being as well is that there's plenty and plenty of mileage from the boys from the Shipwrecked to come yet. So
yeah, that's exactly
absolutely.
it.
We are in season 12, episode 5, M-Corp. It was an episode from 2017, specifically November 2017. And it was the 9th of November 2017. So not too far in the distant past.
That's actually really wild when you think about it. We started in 2020. So in 2020, this was only 3 years old and I hadn't seen it.
Well, in 2020, we'd started and there was actually still new Red Dwarf that hadn't aired yet when we started. So
Yeah, The Promised Land just a few months after, and you immediately banned me from watching it.
yeah.
That's actually quite good, isn't it? It's a bit of an ouroboros, that the fact that we're going to finish Red Dwarf 12, and I know we've got Promised Land to come, but we're not too far off, and we probably will do it, finish the Promised Land before any new Red Dwarf comes back on. So
That
we'll
would be nice.
Yeah, it would be a nice cyclical thing, that, you know. But yeah, this is M-Corp. So Matt, what were your first impressions of this episode? Do you remember it at the time? It's quite a unique one. We've had Samsara, which is quite different recently in Red Dwarf. This is another one that kind of has that kind of feel to it, where it's not really like your typical Red Dwarf. And obviously Samsara has a connection to this in that they mention Megacore, where this is M-Corp. So what do you think to M-Corp as an episode?
Well, I think when I first watched it, I thought it was I thought it was an interesting, decent episode. It's probably less comedic than perhaps other episodes in the series. But I really quite like the concept. Concept is very Red Dwarf, and at the time, I had not watched any Black Mirror, and I think, and to be fair, I think I've still only ever watched the first two series. But after watching Black Mirror, I can kind of see that this is very much Doug Naylor perhaps trying to write a Black Mirror episode with the Red Dwarf characters, because it feels so much like the mission statement that Black Mirror does. And if anyone's listening who's never watched Black Mirror before, Black Mirror is an anthology series written by Charlie Brooker, which is basically like a modern day kind of Twilight Zone, but the stories are like a science fiction technology like focus type thing. So like there's always kind of like weird kind of fables on what modern technology might be in society, and this felt so much like it. And I think that this is an episode that ages quite well, because I feel like its relevance is you can kind of see what it's like lampooning, but I also think that what it's lampooning perhaps will be even more relevant in decades to come. So I think this is one that's going to age really well.
I immediately got the Black Mirror thing as well. And it's the only episode of the lot, the entire run of Red Dwarf, that I felt like this was like Black Mirror. And I can't remember when Black Mirror started. It was probably a couple of years after this, maybe.
No, it was before then.
So Black Mirror was already an established thing by this, because this was most like the Christmas episode that they did. And it was noticeably like Black Mirror. And I'm kind of all for that, because the books were a bit like that. They were a lot grimmer and a lot darker and a lot nastier than you ever saw on the television. Like the way they were affected by Better Than Life in the books was fucking harrowing when I was a kid. You know, they came out like scrawny and like skin and bones, and they had to be brought back to life on life support machines and stuff. And this felt almost like a nod to the Red Dwarf books, as well as a similarity to Black Mirror, I thought.
I think I've listened to some of the audiobooks of the first book. I never finished it, so I can't really talk about the tone of them properly. But I know Kurt mentioned like Series 7 wanted to be a bit more of a comedy drama aspect, which I'm assuming was a bit more like the tone of the books. And I think sometimes you can kind of feel that there are moments where Naylor kind of wants to add a bit more gravitas or drama to stuff, which, no spoilers, we might see again later on post this and the next one.
So it's in the Promised Land is what you're saying?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Hedges his bets. There's not much left.
Yeah. I'm only talking about Titan, you don't know. I think this is probably the closest, or one of the episodes I think is closest to actually being like that comedy drama aspect within the realms of a traditional sitcom. There's probably bits and pieces of jokes and stuff, but I think it's the least sitcom-y episode of particularly Series 12, possibly the entire run. And it doesn't feel like a bad episode because of it. Because I think because the idea is quite central and the characters interacting to it, and possibly it could be funnier, but I think it's a very unique episode in so many ways. because of that.
Yeah, I mean, just saying that. I mean, I think for me, it's interesting. Isn't it? It's almost like the reverse. Like if you've got like a Star Trek episode or an X-Files episode or whatever, which are predominantly like sort of drama, procedural, or sci-fi epic, or sci-fi episodic. You can throw episodes in like a Jose Chung in X-Files case where it's a comedy episode. It doesn't feel out of place. Whereas like Red Dwarf's almost the opposite, where you've got it can stretch itself to have those dramatic moments. I know we'll talk about Promised Land and some dramatic moments in that particular one, but even like in past Red Dwarf episodes that we've got, Lister in Back to Earth, for example, is probably the closest one that's most dramatic. So you've got the Red Dwarf kind of thing has been stretching itself. But I didn't think Samsara was that bad from that perspective either. It still felt Red Dwarf with a different take on it. And I like the idea that it can be a bit elastic in that way. My only disappointment is that we can't really call this Red Mirror, because Red Mirror is actually now an adjacent Black Mirror thing, in that there's episodes of Black Mirror now which are 1970s supernatural horror-esque type episodes now, which is adjacent to the Black Mirror. So we can't even call it Red Mirror.
I think, coming from what you're just saying though as well, I think UK comedy or UK sitcom has a history of being able to provide certain pathos and elements of drama and quite moving, memorable moments that you probably won't get for the majority of like other countries. So like you probably get some moments like in US sitcoms where it's like the dramatic bit and stuff, but you won't have anything like
Blackadder.
The end of Blackadder Goes Forth is the
Blackadder Goes
obvious one.
Forth. Yeah, there are quite a few moments in Only Fools and Horses, like quite moving, and like I think there's a good section of like one of the last episodes where it's about the 10 minutes where it's played like a straight drama just to close things off. And One Foot in the Grave especially had moments like this as well. It's not
4-3-1 or whatever it was.
Yeah. There's always been a kind of like tradition in some elements of UK comedy where they're able to kind of delve into Royal Family, Queen Sheba. That's the one I was thinking. That's the one I was took my tongue. Where they've been able to kind of, because you end up falling for the characters and you care about the characters, that you kind of forget you're watching a sitcom for a moment and you kind of get lost in things. And you get that in previous episodes sometimes as well. But I think this is probably one of the more overt times where they kind of play on that a bit more.
Victor Meldrew's number isn't 4-3-3-1, it's 4-2-9-1. I just needed to double check that.
On the flip side of that, though, I not felt like, as we've looked at Red Dwarf over the last 12 seasons, they were massively pioneering with some science fiction ideas that were really kind of unique and odd. But I don't feel like a dystopic future where one company rules the world is original at all. Yeah. Whereas this is much darker and much more my kind of gritty kind of sci-fi shit. It feels different because it's not something that I'm like, well, that's a fascinating concept. Because it's a concept we have seen in stuff like Black Mirror and other films and television already.
I think there's also the case that you've got elements of quote-unquote lore, like wider Red Dwarf lore that we've only really hinted at, that the show's never really had the opportunity to explore as much. Like for example, like we don't really know what happened to Earth that much, and it's only probably because of like little signals they've been receiving as they've been driving back towards it. So like learning about the fact that Earth was like bought in the 26th century, whereas like there's also other things like, for example, the whole history of the cat people. There's like loads of stuff there that we don't know about as well. So we're kind of like embracing elements of lore and stuff, and there's always been this overarching mystery of if they ever get back to Earth properly, like they properly get back to Earth, not opposed from like the last 10 times they've apparently gone back. What state would they actually find it in? And there's been like all sorts of kind of, that's like always been the kind of thing that, this is the movie would like probably always end up with them being back to Earth, like a big screen version of Red Dwarf. We probably would have seen them go back to Earth, but we never really had that answered. So like, as we learn, getting drip fed more stuff about Red Dwarf, I think it's quite interesting, and it's something that I think, particularly the concept of a corporation buying Earth, I think has been something that they probably had in their head for about 35 years. Because immediately thinking about this, I'm like, why is it M-Corp, not Norweb?
Yeah, I mean, even like sort of, it adds a little bit to the law. I mean, I know obviously MegaCorp, like I said with Samsara, but the Jupiter Mining Ship Corporation is something that was often kind of like sort of referred to, but in the day view, you've got like a little bit more of like a brand recognition. So like seeing the screen, seeing the obviously a lot of the stuff will have it branded and things like that. So the fact that you've got like the actual corporation itself being taken over by M-Corp, it's certainly an interesting concept as well, because it's not something that has really, you never felt like the JMC has ever been under threat in that way, which is a new take as well, it's good, like 12 series down the line.
I think I always got the impression that like JMC is probably not a massive corporation, so it's not like a massive like thing. I can't think of any equivalents from any of the franchises at the moment, but where it's more or less just like, I don't know, like independent MOT or garage just down the corner, just doing its own thing. And I think JMC probably was slightly bigger than that, but not like a massive corporate, a massive like global conglomerate. Because you never really had that answer, so you don't really know the size of it. It's probably big enough to be able to create massive ships, but I've never had the impression that it was like M-Corp size. So it'd be natural. So it'd probably be natural that it'd get taken over by other things.
Yeah.
In a comparison that Mark will understand, it's probably like a Ring of Honor as opposed to like the M-Corp's WWE. Yeah.
I mean, you've isolated an interesting point that only about 5% of our listeners will get. And considering we've got 2 ring announcers on this podcast, you'd have thought more wrestling folk would listen to it. They don't. 5 years on, my wrestle friends are still surprised that I do a Red Dwarf podcast.
I only know Target.
Your podcast's not on wrestling. I'm allowed to have other interests.
You're a ring announcer.
So's Carl.
With he?
Colin isn't.
Never mentioned it.
No.
Never mentioned it. Carl's doing well. He's upped his game of late, hasn't he? He's doing quite well, is the lad.
Mm-hmm.
Carl's still enthusiastic. I'm bitter and jaded 15 years on.
Are you generally bitter and jaded when it's your birthday, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to check that. And do you
Hate
wear in-universe clothing as well?
What?
Oh yeah, we really need to talk about this because it's blowing my bloody mind.
You want to talk about it?
Oh, the mural on the top of Lister.
Yeah.
I just thought that might have been done by the cat.
It's nice because it's got like the word Smeghead written on it, and it looks like it's basically Craig Charles is wearing Red Dwarf merch.
Yeah, but I assumed that the cat is a master seamstress. He'd made that for him.
It's meta. It's very meta.
Yeah.
I know, it's just weird. I don't know. I just can't see a scenario or a dimension where the cat would spend time like creating a small version of Rimmer to put on some clothes that Lister would actively wear.
Well, Crichton learning how to paint. He was a good painter, Crichton, before he got rebuilt. Could be Crichton that has done it. He's got,
I think I'm rebelling.
Is that what you're doing? Are you rebelling?
Rebelling.
Oh, it's all right. We can look back now. Next week it's going to be full of that. It is interesting. I did think there was a little bit of meta play on like sort of let's have some merchandise on here, so as a little wink to the fact of corporate stuff. That's what I thought it was. But it's obviously quite cool as well. To be fair, as you say, it's a little bit of a stretch about how or why he would be wearing like a shirt with Rimmer on it for a start off, but it's a bit of fun. We believe that Lister's having a heart attack and he falls to the ground. Cat ignores him, which is a very early cat thing to do, isn't it?
No, catty. It's a classic cat entrance. It's catty behaviour. And I love that he just takes his dinner and goes, man, now. And it's wonderful. But the one thing I did question was, why is he eating chips instead of curry? Surely it needs some curry sauce on it.
True. Yeah.
I'm more bothered about that than the in-universe merch, to be honest with you.
I mean, when we talked about like sort of the food dwarf and when we're all going to get together and have a bit of eat food within Red Dwarf, you've reached my moment now. I'll have a massive plate of chips, please. Some leopard lager will be fine. Maybe some M-Corp citrus lager. That'd be quite nice. I love some
What
of
about
that.
dog food?
I won't have dog food.
No dog food. What about a pot noodle?
Oh,
pot
noodle.
Yeah.
No.
But this is such a fun episode, but it needs to be in person where we just try all the Red Dwarf food. Even if it's a failure as an episode, we get to try all the Red Dwarf food.
Yeah, as I say, I'll be eating my chips. Speaking of chips, Chippy, another like piece of Red Dwarf, kind of. Go on.
Do not like Chippy. The moment Chippy turned up, I was like, he's like fucking Clippy, and no one likes Clippy. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is a piss take of Clippy.
Yeah.
And what happened to Clippy? Is he dead?
I think I've looked at this before. Have we not discussed this before?
What, Clippy?
Yeah.
But Clippy.
I'm sure Clippy just basically. I'm sure ChatGPT is just Clippy in a mask.
There's a 2022 website that said which is entitled "The Twisted Life of Clippy," and there's even like a guy dressed up as Clippy in front of Bill Gates.
Oh no!
Wow, great,
Yeah.
special.
Let's talk about
Absolutely
Clippy for a while.
not. I always hated Clippy, and I think I ate Chippy as well.
I quite like the idea. I get the idea of Chippy, but again, it's the Red Dwarf finding a very cheap and economical way of incorporating guest characters, which it's done for the whole Dave era, most part. Well, I mean, so they've actually had people, in-person people, but also they've been able to kind of create episodes that surround like these AIs, where it's just basically boxes talking and managing to create characters to them. And I think
Like Vendabar.
yeah.
You can't get over Vendabar.
I fucking love Vendabar. She should have been main cast.
You haven't heard the Metcocracy episode yet, so
Oh, I was fuming. Where was Vendabar?
But like you've got the kind of like when the AI, and I quite like that personality where it's like, oh look, I'm just currently trying to get through my three, and I think it's actually quite an interesting take because I think it's going to, from the outset, it's like, I know it's going to be another episode about Lister growing old, which almost is, but it kind of deviates quite quickly. So you get the fact that it's hinted that it's his 50th.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was his 50th or his 60th at this point.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out his age and stuff. But I think it's about 20 odd years. I think apparently, I suppose. I think we're safe to say.
Well,
But
23 years ago, wasn't it? Because they kind of they say in the episode, don't they? It says that 23, we'll have to take him back to when he was 23. I don't know if maybe it wasn't 23 years ago, though. Maybe it was just when he was back to 23. So it's like 20 odd years. So, yeah, I think they are assuming it's 50.
Yeah.
I think they are looking around or getting
27.
close to 50.
So it kind of deviates from that quite quickly, but then kind of has a few kind of jokes at Lister's expense of like, again, we have like another version of someone predicting Lister's death and it's a completely different age. So I'm pretty sure like Cassandra predicted it'd be 103 or something. And now he's
Future
like
Echoes,
63.
he was 100 and something, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he was like, 63 in here.
Red Dwarf is malleable. It's fine. Obviously, Chippy doesn't see his own death coming, though. Did you cheer for Joy, Mark?
I mean, I was pleased. Yeah. Fuck Chippy. Fuck Clippy.
And obviously, we have to say that you're talking about like sort of thing that Rimmer gets a chance to do his Lister impression. Yes, please, man.
That was fun. That was really fun and naughty. And then we got a classic cat being vain joke. I know next week's episode is supposed to be the greatest hits, but it feels like this is the cat's greatest hits right here in the first few minutes of this episode.
Do not unplug. So the updates. And again, we can talk about that from a perspective of like AI and technology and stuff like that, because I'm like you with Clippy, in updates are the worst, or the way that sometimes they can be portrayed, because the amount of times that they've almost ruined a gig for me when I've been doing a disco has been a nightmare. You turn the laptop on, updates are installing. It's like, oh my God, I've got a first dance to do in an hour. Please work.
It does feel like this is probably the most modern episode of Red Dwarf, but I guess it is the third most modern episode of Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? We've talked in the past about how things like videotapes look incredibly dated. This feels very, very modern.
It does.
Yeah. Although I will defend the necessity of updates, considering my line of work. And
I understand the necessity of them, but it's the forced updates that I had a problem with.
Well, if you just selected to do them at a more convenient time before, they had to kind of force them to do it.
So then we get a couple of montage things in this episode as well. There's 2 main montages. Everyone loves a montage. Even Rocky had a montage, by the way.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get the conglomerate, like, kind of, you know, robotic arms moving around a bit, you know, with all those, like, B-roll stuff happening. And then later on, we get a montage as well. So there's 2 montage scenes in this episode, which, again, is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think the first one, with the blue screen stuff, it's done really, really well. And Craig's acting is exceptionally good. He knows this character like the back of his hand now. The invisible cat stealing his food. I loved that. I loved that so much.
The montage, that second one, because obviously you've got like sort of the corporate one, and then you've got the one where he's going around and you get the beans and toast and stuff. Again, I can have cheap chips, beans and toast. There you go, that's another one. This episode is basically designed for me to be able to have the food on our food, Red Dwarf. That is basically it. I'm just doing M-Corp, thank you very much. It was interesting, but the montage itself allowed them to do really dystopic, dark, melodic, minor key stuff as well. So I thought the music played into this quite well. We haven't mentioned the music for quite some time, really. But I thought the music in this, especially those moments where it was a bit more dystopic, worked really well.
The concept, I think, particularly at this point of the episode, so I think it's like an episode which kind of delves into 2 different kind of things. So this is like the first kind of major theme it does, where like Lister becomes property of M-Corp, and thus can no longer see anything that isn't M-Corp. And it, like, so things start vanishing, and like the ship and magically somehow gets all this new stuff. It's never explained where this stuff comes from, of course.
It comes from the update.
For the update. But Lister can do all these kind of things. It must be like M-Corp nanobots or something. And do all these things, but then he can't see anything. But that includes other beings, including Rimmer, the cat, and Crichton. Lister can no longer see or interact with them. Which is kind of like Stark and stuff. But it's something that's in like the tech world, it's like already happening, and sometimes happening where you've got incompatibility coming through and stuff. One of the big things at the moment is I think it's HVEC and the HEIC file formats that iPhone phones do things
Or the
in.
video formats,
Yeah, which are completely incompatible with any like Android or Microsoft operating system.
Surprise, surprise. And people wonder why I don't like Apple.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm the same. I fucking hate Apple for that shit, and they do it so frequently.
yeah, so and like for example, and the work that I do, we sometimes get people that send stuff that they're taking on their iPhone, but we can't. And people think, oh, so and so sent us this. Can we can't open it, and we can't. And like Microsoft have built a kind of conversion thing, but you have to pay 80p for it. And I'm like,
God.
So I sod that, not paying for that. Not paying for that. So we just have to try and just tell the person to send it as a different format. But that kind of stuff is already happening already, and it technically kind of has been kind of already in different computer types. Like back in the 1980s, you had like the Spectrum and Amstrad, and then you got C64, then you got the Amiga, then you got the SNES and Mega Drives and stuff where they could kind of competing with each other. But like here, you've got them actively affecting a person because of like different technology and stuff, and because of how much technology is becoming part of everyday life, and with AR, the augmented reality and AR happening and stuff, you probably have points where I think I could probably see a future where like they bring back Google Glass but with contact lenses, but then like theoretically you will not be able to see certain things because the lenses that you have don't have rods to see.
We're going into a Doctor Who world now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the dot and bubble stuff type stuff where. But then like they can't see things because the company doesn't have the capability to render what's in front of you to you and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really weird, and like the second half of the episode kind of goes into other types of stuff as well. But I was quite surprised at how much this episode tackles those kind of themes when you think about it, and kind of corporate kind of greed and like incompatibility with each other. So like, oh, we're trying to have a monopoly of stuff, even like operating systems and phones. And at some points in their lives, for example, the iPhone and Apple, they eventually like gave up the goose in terms of the lightning ports and thought, okay, we're going to have to go with the micro USB.
Well, they were forced to do
They were
that,
forced
weren't
by
they?
the EU,
But they tried to dictate their own thing of the market. This is like
Well, I knew Apple would come up because, again, it's very pointed at Apple, to be fair, because, you look at the minimalistic approach in which the colours are all like the clean whites. And
and I was going to say the whiteness of this episode is in direct contrast to how dark the theme is. And I genuinely think it's so blatantly an attack on Apple.
Blatant.
Is it blatant?
Blatant attack. And it's an attack that is deserved, and there's no lies told here about the behaviour of Apple at all.
No, I mean, even to the point where Apple, if you look at like the Patreon stuff at the moment, I know we're not on Patreon, but if anyone wants to send us some money, then by all means, send it through. That's fine.
You don't have to.
I am the M-Corp now. Yes, if you'd like to donate to our cause, then please dial this number, 4291. Oh, well, I can't think what my point was there. Oh, yeah, so like sort of the Patreon, where, or even other things as well, like it's not just Patreon, it's any other thing that's outside of the ecosphere of Apple that they put a surcharge on a lot of things. So like, they'll put like a 30% increase if you're wanting to get such and such from a different source, or they want to put, you want to put your app on Apple, for example. And, I'm not well versed into it, but there's quite a lot of conversations around that kind of era about like, because they're so fenced in, that they can monopolize the stuff, and it's kind of quite anti-competitive in a lot of ways. So that in itself is definitely pointed within this episode. It's that it feels like that's what it's trying to get at. And then obviously you get other concepts, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we get into like Charging Time. We've had films of Justin Timberlake that does that.
In Time's a great film. I put that in my notes. But it does again go back to what I was saying, that there's so much originality in early Red Dwarf. And I'm not saying this is a bad episode, because it's not. But all the dark future stuff in this episode has been done elsewhere already.
Oh, yeah. There's not many original ideas. If we talk about that, actually, the In Time thing, because that is something that is a slight reversal, and it's more about I'm starting to get off this now, because obviously we're all getting older, in that I don't now like clamber for the next generation phone, because they've become so incremental a lot of the times. And yes, you get the best camera and stuff like that, but there is an element of that, like saying, I will die for this next iPhone, I will die for the next Galaxy S25. I've got to have the next big thing. You know what I mean? And there's a bit of element with that, saying, would you give a part of your life just to have the next big gadget? And there's that underplaying it a little bit as well.
I think it's a Family Guy thing where, like, the time that make out the US Klondike bar adverts, where it says, would you do anything for a Klondike bar? Would you do this? Would you do this? And in Family Guy is, would you kill a man? And then just hear a gunshot. And with that in time section, I think we slightly are over the place. But the in time and payment stuff, I think, is also a satire on microtransactions. Games and stuff as well. So, and basically M-Corp is kind of monopolising a game without, let's say, if they own everything, there's no competition to kind of drive prices down. At the moment, you've got games where, like, it's the fun stuff. If you want to get out, complete this level, like, it's designed to kind of say, if you want a couple more moves to complete this level that you just run moves on, buy a couple of tokens, and a couple of tokens will then be able to give you a few more lives or a couple of bonuses and stuff. And
it's gross.
And I've managed to not, after like being addicted to 2 dots for years, I've managed to never fall to get microtransactions on that. Even though I've been stuck on levels for months at a time. In here, they kind of twist it so that it's necessities that you kind of have to have. In that, because you need to have so many £pounds be able to do things, and they charge extortionate amounts for it, going beyond the price of inflation.
Now, have either of you read The Grapes of Wrath by Jim Steinbeck?
No.
Well, that covers a very similar kind of hidden slavery of how they did that in the States with people. And it's vicious and grim, and there were people trapped with the only shop that they could access was owned by their landlord, and it was more expensive than the other shop. But to get to the other shop would cost them more in fuel and stuff like that. That was in The Grapes of Wrath, written in the, I want to say, 40s. But it's basically a creation of modern slavery by pretending you've got a job that isn't enough to pay your bills. And the pain pills thing was really gross. And it was so dark that I was like, this isn't funny anymore. If it's reminding me of The Grapes of Wrath, this isn't funny. The Grapes of Wrath is a grim book. And yeah, I never thought I'd be thinking about John Steinbeck's bleak fucking books whilst watching Red Dwarf.
I know the South Park version of that.
Of course you do.
Yeah, where basically like the whole internet goes in the country and everyone goes across the country looking for that old internet. There's a hilarious thing that basically Randy Marsh is basically trying to get internet to look for porn, but
Of course he is.
yeah, but yeah,
Randy Marsh has got to be involved in some way.
yeah. But the kind of like I did that, like the pretty much forcing you to kind of like live in a certain way and just to exploit like people and stuff, and basically saying that in order to live you have to kind of go to the desperation, and the bigger commodity that people can afford is time. And again, I've not seen In Time actually, so I can't.
It's worth a watch. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's an outstanding film, but it's a good watch.
But I kind of know the concept of it. But basically, buying things through life and stuff. And I think there'd be like again, there'd probably been other stories and fables and anthology stories where you've got people who kind of go into certain room or find paradise, but basically soul selling aspects of it, things where, and there are other, and I think the other thing that I think this kind of remind me of as well is perhaps like almost the practice of how companies and corporations or software houses or companies have basically monetized or found ways to keep getting money from people. And I'm thinking about the absolutely hideous and stupid, from a capitalist point of view, it's ingenious. From everyone else, it's a pain in the arse. The ever-growing subscription model that's happened, and not for just like streaming services. Well, streaming services actually could probably cover this as well. But like things like the Adobe software suite, where like you could just buy, like you could just spend a couple of £100 on like a collection of software, and then you just have that, and it will work. And you could probably use like, I don't know, like Photoshop in 2021 for about 10 years before you thought, okay, I really need to go and get the new version now. By that, here now you're kind of locked in a monthly subscription in terms of, okay, I need to use this software, I need to pay a constant amount of money for this thing to use. And then if I stop paying that money, then I can't use the thing that I probably need to use. It lives like, well, graphic designers and stuff are having to kind of like suddenly start taking parts of their income on a monthly basis to pay for.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because a couple of things came into my head there. So, number one, Mark, do you remember radio rentals?
You also remember radio rentals?
When you used to rent your TV?
Yeah.
Back in the olden days, that's what you used to do. Because I always used to think...
I'm surprised you do, because you're a few years younger than me, and it was on its way out.
It was on its way out. But
I've heard the name, I've got no idea what it is.
It was basically just you'd rent your TV.
Basically like a loan purchase type thing, like a loan hire type thing, like sometimes different cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Cars and phones even as well, yeah. So, well,
yeah.
So
you got various deals. It was the same as car rental, but on a much smaller scale. So, you could either find plans where you have and eventually buy, or you have plans where you rent and you can cash in for a new one, similar to but on a smaller scale, because it's a smaller product to a car.
That sounds just like hire purchase and stuff that people
have. Exactly that.
Yeah,
exactly that.
Yeah. It's funny how you go from that in the 70s, 80s to like where we are now, because we had ownership for a long time. And then you get to the point of like the line wires and stuff like that, which obviously use technology, the BitTorrents. And then eventually we get to subscription models. And then, then we're kind of like circling around a little bit. And I know there was a few car companies, and some of them are still doing it now, where you get like a month, but my month's just subscription for cars and stuff. So it's just funny how that's why I mentioned radio rentals because of the whole TV thing and talking about the 70s and stuff. I mean, I mentioned Soylent Green in a recent episode, and that's kind of like a dystopic thing as well. So there's a lot of things with that, but it's interesting going from the 70s to now, where we are compared to then. I mean, I've got my subscriptions that I have. I don't even bat an eyelid at now. I mean, there's a certain video platform that I've got full premium for that I don't get any adverts for anything, and I use that platform quite a lot to watch stuff, and I don't even think about it. But it's in the background. I don't get all of the nagging things that would put another 4 hours worth of adverts in, and ironically, that's about time, isn't it? Because obviously, I'm not losing time because I've paid towards it. So it's just fascinating from that perspective. I also I won't go into this now because it'd be very capitalist of me. I was looking at the editing suite that I use, and there's an affiliate program that I was looking into recently. But I cannot say that because I'm not an affiliate of them, and I would not do that on a Red Dwarf podcast with all my loony lefties around me.
Loony lefties.
I did
nice human beings who care about other people.
Just prodding the bear.
Well, the bears.
Mark, excuse me, Mark. I happily self-identify as a loony. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Good for you.
They were having a go at me last week and the week before, Matt,
We
about
did,
me
we
being
picked on him.
centrist. We're picking on me.
It's better than right wing.
It is.
Moving on.
Let's talk about the things that were disappearing because it has some great lines. There's been a lot of good Crichton moments in this series in 12. And just when he's like, I think I will disappear too.
Disappear too.
That was a great joke. It was a great joke. Even the stupid little noise just made it better.
Obviously, all the things that he couldn't see. So when Crichton does the lifting of the thing and he puts it onto his side, and then you get the wavy thing, no matter what that, I don't know what that was.
It was an electric toothbrush, right? It was definitely an electric toothbrush.
He was using an electric toothbrush later, and it looked nothing like that. It looked a lot thinner.
I love that you never actually got to see that item from someone else's perspective. I thought that was very important that you never got to see. So you never truly know what it was. But all those gags with the invisible things were brilliant. Obviously, the really simple one of him lying on a green screen bed worked so perfectly. It was just great. It was really, really fun.
There's like the visual gag of the cat shaking a beer can and just making the wank.
Yes, not spraying, Mark.
Because I thought when we did the episodes looking at the theme tunes, that was some kind of cat thing, like a cat sprays to mark their territory. That was my prediction for what that was.
Unfortunately, I do know that at the moment because my cat is doing that inside, and we've had to buy a plug because I think it needs to calm him down. But he's getting old, so he's getting a bit thick. So I'm not having a good time with that. But yes.
But how was I supposed to predict invisible lager? Come on.
Especially because it's like tab lager because it's so clear. It just looks like water.
Yeah.
Maybe it is water from a canal. Rest in peace, Sean Locke. There's a gag where he takes out a can and it's just like covered up, like they sometimes doing like TV where they got the cover up like cans or something just to not show the brand and stuff. And it's just got water. I'm having a nice can of fresh water. It's clearly alcohol and it's like a brown colour. And he's going, it's from a canal. So that's where that joke's from.
Uncle Frank makes an appearance. This goes back to what I've been saying about especially Red Dwarf 12 in that they do like to go back in time and make references to previous shows, and sometimes it works for the better, sometimes it doesn't. This is the password element because they basically say, we know this story, which I thought that was actually quite interesting. Like you say, no one's supposed to know, and they're all like, yeah, but you've told us, so yeah. Who else is to know?
There's a couple of off-colour jokes, and I think that's the first time I've seen that in Series 12. There was inevitable sexism saying that women speak more than men, and
it's interesting
the Uncle Frank
if
joke.
You Google it, it comes up saying that. No, but the actual truth of the matter is, because I know I was going to talk about that, is that if you Google it, it comes up saying about that number, but it's something like 20,000 words men and 15,000 words, 199 women or something. So it's like really close. So it's like nowhere near what they're suggesting, but somewhere someone has managed to unconsciously put a bias in there to make it that distinct. And there's been studies about like in certain workplaces or certain things where a man will naturally speak more if he's in a power situation. He'll have more words, or women will speak less when they're questioning. More obviously absolutely academically done rather than like throwing those words out. And it just sounds interesting. It felt like he's just Googled and saw the first thing and gone, am I right? Oh, yes, I am. And then put it in the show, and that feels a bit strange.
Pretty
'Cause
sure
it
he
just-
didn't even Google and he just wanted to be misogynistic.
Well, the numbers, right? So if I hang on a second, if I Google it now,
so the numbers are actually
How many-
okay.
so how many words do men and women say? The AI says women speak 16,215 and men speak 15,669. But if you go down the Google searches, on the BBC, Protocol of the Sexes, this is back in 2013, women use an average of 20,000 words per day compared to the mere 7,000 that men utter. And that was from a BBC article in 2013. But it obviously doesn't have any context in that. It's a long article, so I didn't read it. But it's based off 73 studies, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's very kind of bias in what it's trying to say. So,
Yeah.
which is news, it's on a BBC thing anyway. But yeah, so it looks like he's literally just Googled it and found that and then just gone, put that on. What was the other ones then? What other things that you had?
The Uncle Frank joke's just a little bit unpleasant, isn't it?
Yeah,
Laughing at someone being sexually assaulted isn't great.
it isn't. So we talk about our special guest character.
I think we should.
Yes, Kurt, we shall. That will be $600
She's great.
Could you imagine a Matt AI? $600.
Don't think of a Matt AI. People prefer it to me.
A Matt AI would be more charming than Hob Boldness.
I need to hear back from him. I've not heard back from him for a while. I hope he's okay.
Helen George.
She's famous, isn't she? I've never seen her before.
She was in
She's
the midwife thing. Is
Well,
that-
that's why I've not seen it, because I don't watch that.
The lead of one of the BBC flagships.
Right.
Yeah.
How did they afford her? Or was it before?
Call the midwife.
no.
That's the word I'm looking for. Call the midwife.
No, so at the moment, so she didn't call the midwife 2012 to 2024 at the moment. So yeah, she's actively still on Call the Midwife. I think she's the longest serving cast member, I think, that's still on the show. She's a big getter when you think about it.
I would guess then, in a similar way to Johnny Vegas, she's a fan and she wanted it rather than they could afford her.
Might be, I think, probably the same case for James Buckley as well, in Crisis. Crisis for a lot less screen time. But I think,
No,
like,
you're not thinking.
not Crisis.
No, it's
The
not
In-Betweeners
Crisis.
guy was Crisis.
It wasn't Crisis.
I'm thinking Crisis because it's a
Siliconia.
crime century. Yeah.
Siliconia.
Teleconia, that's it.
I'm new at this.
I'm gonna make the suggestion that like 99%, like 95% of the Red Dwarf cast probably would not recognise it because I can't see the Call the Midwife, Red Dwarf
I didn't.
viewership.
I didn't.
Like the Venn diagram is probably going to be hard. It's not going to be that close together, the Venn diagram for that. But I think she did really quite well, and he's probably one of the more threatening and creepy and sinister antagonists we've probably had
Yeah.
on the show today.
On Tongue Tied, on that webpage, it basically says Helen George based her performance of Anita of a robot or avatar of an unfeeling corporate entity which is within her and which is only in it for what they can get out for themselves. So you also imagined an air hostess giving customers the news that their flight has been delayed by 30 hours, all the while smiling and being charming, but ultimately doesn't care. That's what she based it on.
Definitely you do well.
That would be $100 pounds.
But I think it's quite interesting, like, particularly when you've had previous AI villains in the past, or antagonists rather than actual outright villains. So like, we think of, like, say, Pre from Series 10, who was just basically being efficient, whereas there's a strange kind of unknowing agenda or programming underneath. I think, is it Anita? And there's kind of like sinister kind of like corporate agenda behind the AI's programming here that seems to be quite gleeful, where
Yeah, well, as you say, like we said before, wasn't it? I mean, the whole like Apple aspect to it, where if you look at like you've said, JMC people, the Holly stuff, they're there to serve a function. Like Pre's there to serve a function, to be the most efficient, but doesn't have any human empathy whatsoever. Holly's there has a bit of more of a a bit of more of a personality, but it's ultimately about the ship. At the end of the day. Whereas, like what she says there about like the air hostess thing, it's like I've been given this thing to drain as much money out of this person as I can, You know what I mean? It's like it's just corporate greed again. It's that kind of feeling to it. So yes, it's a villain, but she's the face of the villain rather than the villain itself. In some ways,
I'd agree with that.
It makes think that if they had more time, would they want to explore the idea of M-Corp more? Like this like the corporate thing taking over JMC. Is there more mileage out of this or not? I'm not sure. It'd be interesting. I don't think it's something we'll probably find out now, but it'd be interesting just exactly what other ideas that could have spun from the M-Corp thing.
Yeah. All adds to the world of Red Dwarf. And I think finally for me, we talked about the 23 thing because the only way to reboot Lister is to reboot Lister. They're going to have to recover his memories from CCTV footage. And the last reboot that he had, which is a nice touch actually with the hologram aspect of it, like you need a personality disc, etc.
Yeah, I thought that was really a cool thing and makes huge amounts of sense. And why would he be backed up for a hologram, seeing as he's only useful as the last human, not the last hologram?
And I think this is a particular thing in my head that works for a callback because it's like you don't need to, we'll talk about Skipper next week, but you don't need to necessarily worry about anything with that because it is just our Lister. Somehow science fiction, he's been lost all his memory and they're going to have to rebuild him using segments. You know, we've seen Rimmer get memories from Lister before, you know what I mean, and false memories and stuff like that. So it's all within the universe. And the fact that he's having to do Ganymede and Titan and he just like, it's just brilliant.
It's so good. The thing with his cheeks and the cigarette in his ear. This is the first time we've seen a cigarette since series 2, probably.
Ganymede and Titan. That's it. That's the episode. So thanks, chaps. Have you got anything else you want to bring up on your notes?
There's a brief cameo. So when...
Oh, yeah, we haven't talked about Friends, have we?
Yeah. So when Lister's first in there, and he says, you can buy friends, Dave. Meet Steve. And then suddenly Ian Baldworth shows up and goes, all right, mate. I'm
Who's
this
Ian
and this.
Baldworth?
Ian Baldworth is also known as someone called Ray Peacock, who was he had a podcast with Ed Gamble years and years ago. And he's also the warm-up comedian for all of series 11 and 12.
Oh, that's nice that they brought the warm-up comedian. That's very kind of first few series with Tony Hawk, isn't it?
Yeah. So basically, so he's basically there. And I think he kind of begged Doug Naylor to be able to get a role in there and something. And I think according to the Tongue-Tied Wiki, he said his initial idea was someone who'd just been living there for years and they just not noticed. But they kind of scrapped that and just had him show up as Dave, as Steve. And he was I'm really crap at video games, so you'd always beat me. I play drums, which I think, but on paper sounds like an actual dream fit for Lister in terms of friends. Zero G football, Truth Lager, plays an instrument that's not guitar.
But it's not real, and I like the fact that Lister goes, no, it's it's not, it's not human in some ways, isn't it? It's like a false thing. False reality thing. Yeah,
I only played it very briefly, but I did dabble in, I think, Second Life, which was this massive online kind of weird thing and stuff.
Yeah.
And
it's still going.
Is it flipping heck?
Yeah,
the only thing
I'm
I know
sure
is it could fly. It could fly.
Me and my friend, my mate's brother-in-law actually used to this is how sad we were at one point. We had Sad Life on, and we were in the same bloody room. And we're actually in Second Life. We used to do Second Life, and we used to go to this rock bar pretty much every Saturday. Well, whenever we weren't gigging on a Saturday night, we'd end up going to this rock bar. It was great. You used to go and see a gig and listen to some music or have a disco, meet some friends and stuff like that. But yeah, I used to play Second Life quite a lot. But it is still available. It is still online.
Talking about that, it's just reminding me of a book, Manchester Connection as well. So there's a book I've got called Wildlife, written by an author called Joe Stretch, who was the lead singer of a Manchester kind of indie synth band called We Are Performance. Their first album is one of my favourite albums of all time. He's written a couple of books and they're quite really weird. I'm not going to talk about his first book, Friction, because it just goes into some really depraved stuff. But this one, Wildlife, similarly depraved, but it's basically about these like people getting stuck in this Second Life type world and stuff, where like their interactions are done through this AI world and everything. And this kind of episode kind of reminded me of that, and of like M-Corp apparently now seemingly wanting to kind of like get all their employees in this kind of world that they're in. It's like this VR world,
Right.
like Second Life or Total Immersion game or something. And it just reminded me of that.
Well, interestingly enough, Linden Labs, which is the company that owns Second Life, have posted about updating your drivers 2 hours ago.
Wow.
My name was Moldrake Knoll in Second Life. I'm probably still registered at some point somewhere. Should all have a go at Second Life.
I never did Second Life, but I was massively into World of Warcraft, and it was pretty similar in its addiction levels.
I did try RuneScape briefly. This was years and years and years ago, and I think I was still on a dial-up modem at that point.
Excellent. Well, if that's everything, then where can people find you online, Matt?
If they want to find me, they can probably find me most by searching for Pick a Disc, which is my podcast where I talk to people about albums. I'm on all the social medias under that name, so you can find me there. I'm also on Classics About Loom, which is my podcast about point and click adventure games. So just search for them too, you'll find me.
Nice. Mr. Adams, where can people find you?
My personal account on Twitter and Instagram is @MarkAdamsHC. I talk about stuff on both of them, but the Instagram one is probably only interesting if you are interested in weddings and funerals and naming ceremonies. Other than that, I'm still doing Chucky Vision, even though Chucky got cancelled and my heart is broken. We're still doing it. It's going monthly, but we're not going anywhere because I'm stubborn and I like specials. So if you like Killer Dolls, @ChuckyVision on Twitter, or just search for it wherever you're listening to Shipwrecked Comatose. It's a pun. I like a pun.
You like a pun, Mark? You
do.
like a pun. So you can find me on Linktree, linktr.ee/Moldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. And our fellow friend Jeff Owen mentioned to me half my links weren't working. So they are now back operational. So that's good. Yeah, so you can find me on there. I'm talking about everything under the sun at the moment. With Star Trek Lower Decks, I'm talking about Lost and obviously the X-Files as well. So those are the 3 other podcasts other than this one. Next week, we are going to be talking about the final episode of Series 12, the final 6-part series. And that's going to be Skipper, and Matt and Mark are going to be joining me. So until then,
That will be $400 pounds.
No, it won't. Shut up, Matt. Shipwrecked and Comatose is a podcast brought to you by the Film Stories Podcast Network.
the show was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North.
The logo was designed by Carl Bryan and the theme tune was composed and performed by me, Colin Jackson Brown.
I suppose I'm here as well. Matt Latham.
Follow us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod and follow the network on Twitter at Film Stories.
Ma.